Hi guys, thanks for watching and welcome to another episode of Strengths of Being Dyslexic. I just want to pass over to Leah.
Excellent. So thanks, Neil, and hopefully you enjoyed the previous episodes. But I've got a very special person joining today, a very dear friend of mine, absolutely love her to bits, and that is Naz Nankail. Have I finally pronounced that right? Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't make my name very dyslexic friendly, eh?
Exactly. Well, look at my surname, Roelich. Yeah, work that
Roelich.
one out.
I can never say your surname. I say it Roelich.
I know, we've been friends for years and we still can't get our names right, but
Yeah.
it's all good fun. But
yesterday I
thank you
tried
so
to
much.
find you on Instagram, like Roelei.
Row your boat, ROW. But thank you so much for taking the time to, well, basically share your story. So I am going to stop talking. I know that's unusual for me, but very much I just want you to kind of share a bit about yourself, you know, when you were diagnosed and about where you are now with your killer business. And yeah, just the floor is yours. Go for it.
Okay, so as you can see, my name is Naz, and that's short for Nazanin, but I just prefer Naz, I guess. I am an Iranian born. I grew up in Ukraine, and then I moved to England. So dyslexia is like something that came to my knowledge like in the UK from the age of 15. Like that's not common in Iran. I don't think Iran has dyslexia, or Ukraine. Like it's maybe known in the medical world, but no one knew about it. And now that I look back on it, me and my dad are both dyslexic. So as you know, dyslexia is also genetics, from like it's inherited. So I see my dad, like he can't spell. And I have to check his papers sometimes. He's a dentist, so he writes papers for dentistry, and I'm just like, oh, that's another paper that's written by a dyslexic and being checked by a dyslexic. Like, this is not working, Dad. You need to find someone that's not dyslexic. But like, we were in complete denial that we had this problem, and both of us are like extremely mathematical. My dad is extremely like into his science, is really good with maths. His first degree was in engineering, his second degree was in dentistry, and like across the whole time, Iran, Ukraine, England, he had problems with language. So when we came over here, it took him 7 years to pass the English exams, when he's a really good dentist, but he just could not pass the English exam, especially the writing part. And he was so frustrated. I remember watching him. I didn't know what it was. I was like, oh, okay, well, he's probably, me being 15, I was just thinking my dad's probably lazy. Like, why does he like finally pass his exam? But now that I look at it from, you know, being 31 and having a tutoring agency where I'm constantly having parents with children with dyslexia calling us and saying, my child is really struggling in school. Now I'm so in tune with it, and I now can see the bigger picture of, hey, it's okay. Like, we were struggling, we were not lazy, we were just struggling. That's how our brain is wired. Now,
yeah, that's a really interesting point, Naz. Being accused of being lazy as a dyslexic person, which in my view, it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, you're one of the hardest workers I've ever met. I always feel guilty when I talk to you. You tell me how many hours you've worked in the week. I feel like I've done nothing. And we've discussed before, haven't we, Neil, how we've had to work twice as hard as anyone else to get the results. So that's a really interesting point you've raised there about how it can sometimes be seen as lazy if you can't pass the test or read the book.
It's not sometimes, it's a lot of times. I see it across children, because we now deal with children, and I see it in parents, and you know, you can't really say your child probably has dyslexia, so you need to get them like slowly into there, saying, oh, have you got tests done in schools? Have you seen them read in front of you? How do they read in front of you? How do they pronounce things in front of you? There are tests that you can do online as well, just like to get the preliminary, you know, assessment before you can do the big assessment. But it's really interesting. There's 10% of us who are dyslexic in the world, right?
Yeah.
So every 1 in 9 has dyslexia. Now, 10% is a big population. And there was a study in YouGov that's kind of did like a study for dyslexic people amongst everyone, and only 3% of the people that they interviewed thought of dyslexia as, you know, an advantage. Only 3% of the whole database that they looked at thought dyslexia is an advantage. Now, to me, that is absolutely crazy, because that comes down to a lot of things that are wrong in our educational system, essentially. Now, if you look back on the history side of things, I often try and go back on things. Like, we started our journey in this world as hunter-gatherers, tradesmen. Now, how did we study back then? It was through kinesthetic learning. So tactile learning, very much practicals, you know, there's trades, this is what you do. So it was very much like real-based learning, wasn't it? No, and then 100%. What happened? Industrial Revolution happened, whereby we were forced to become robots. Like, the big people came in and they thought, oh, this is great. We can standardize people. We can put them into factories and make a lot of money out of them. Like, we'll just put them all in this box and we'll take some other data and put them in this box, and this is it. So we'll also do this, the same thing to schools, because we need people to work 9 to 5. So we'll create the schools around that time, and we'll absolutely standardize everything so that we can have these worker bees working for us. Great. Like, they were so happy for this. You know, Industrial Revolution was a big turn in the world. But what happened is people were suddenly put into boxes, and people can't be put into boxes. Dyslexic people are the creatives. We think with different side of our brain to the 90%. 90% thinks with the left side of the brain, we think with the right side of the brain. That's our predominant side, right? That's your creatives. That's like the way we process information is predominantly different to everyone else. But we are forced to think with our left side. That's why we work harder, because as children, we have to go and retrain ourselves, retrain our natural system in order to be able to fit ourselves into that built box. And the funny part is that we are given so much shame and guilt if we don't understand things. So
yeah, I love how you're going down a real scientific route with this, because Neil sent me a wonderful video of lots of celebrities, professors who have either studied or have dyslexia, and one professor hit on that point. If dyslexia was so much of a disadvantage, how come in the evolutionary process has it survived? And exactly as you said, as cave people, actually dyslexic people have the advantage of looking at things holistically. So the big picture first, and then working back from there. So from, I guess, from a hunting point of view, they're scanning the whole area to see what's up, you know, and that's got to be a big advantage. And I suppose sometimes we have the same brain, because I've been researching, you know, how did the education system come to be? And it is from the Industrial Revolution, Victorian times, an ideal that is so many years old, hundreds and hundreds of years old, and it's not being updated. I mean, obviously your business is tutoring, so you're literally in the education game, so you see it more firsthand than myself. And it must really frustrate you to see how outdated it is. And that's how I feel anyway. And what would your kind of solution, if you were in power, I would love it if you were in power, what would your solution be to helping improve the education system for dyslexic people, and just in general as well, you know, for all children? What would you do?
So this is an interesting point, because I don't blame the schools the way they run right now. It's just what happened as a result of Industrial Revolution. Teachers don't have the qualification to help dyslexic people. So schools have budgets for dyslexic children with dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. However, that budget's very limited, right? So not many people can get the diagnosis. And so that's why they would come to tutoring agencies, because I myself have always had tutoring with languages, and that's what has helped me over the years. Like from a very early on, my mum did recognize the fact that I'm struggling, so she just naturally just gave me tutors. And for me, it was difficult because in Ukraine, I spoke to my mum in Farsi, Iranian language. Then I would have to go to school and speak in Ukrainian, and then outside of Ukrainian school, we would speak in Russian. So I had to process 3 different languages. I always struggled with reading things, and my mom was trying to push like Iranian language, which has Arabic writing on it. Then from Ukrainian, it's Russian writing. And then coming to here, it's now like English alphabet. So my mind was like always struggling. Reading was just such a terrible thing for me. I don't see schools like being able to help people, but since it's such a small minority, parents should be able to get funding from the government to get external help for their children. Schools don't have the ability to bring someone in and focus on the child, like, I don't know, 5 hours a week. That's a lot of expense, right? I started off my business as a tutor myself, a maths tutor, and dyscalculia is something that I see. And if someone's got dyscalculia, they probably have dyslexia as well. So there are various ways to go about and helping children. As you know, dyslexia has such a wide spectrum. Like one child that I would have would perform a lot better on writing on a paper that was darker, and that fixed it for her. Not fixed it for her, but it just made it easier for her to learn. And another child just had to be so much more tactile and visual, and we had to create things for her to feel and to sense. Like every child is different, so you have to, as a tutor, you have to, or as a teacher, you have to find the best way to teach them. Someone who's got dyslexia, they're creative. My students who had dyslexia, they were amongst the most creative at solution finding. It would baffle me. It would completely like make my mind just go wild, thinking, how did you come up to this solution going from A to B like this? I didn't think of it as a bad thing. I was just like fascinated by it. I was like, I didn't even think about it. You still come to a conclusion. I don't care. Like the answer's still right, but it's fascinating how you were the only one to go from here, 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 here to get to the answer, as opposed to here to here, where everyone goes. For me, it's more important to see this rather than this, because that's 90% and this is the creative, right? So I would always enhance on it, and I would tell the parents, I would say to them, get your children to do music, get your children to do more engineering stuff whereby they can create things. And I would push the parents that way as well. I wouldn't tell them your child is stupid or your child is lazy, because that was not it. I would just tell them, you need to focus on your child and get the best out of them.
That's really good. That's pretty much what Stuart said in our last episode. And I love that solution, actually, because I've been thinking about this. How can the education system be improved? And like you said, that's a difficult task. It's something that has been along and installed for so many years. But the idea of maybe additional funding from the government to do external outside, I think that's a really clever and initiative way of perhaps helping these children. Because like you said, it is a small minority, but with such a wide spectrum of how they are going to learn. And I think that's a fab way. But on that point of those parents or within the school system, encourage those kids to really go for their strengths. I know when I was at school, I got ripped away from those creative things to do the booster classes, which I don't think was the right thing to do, but instead do that externally and then help them flourish in school at that strength area. I think that's a really good solution. What do you think now? I think that's a fabulous idea.
I find it fascinating, the fact that you're going back through to the wars, the hunter-gathering, and moving up through there and experiencing the what was it, the revolution, the industrial revolution of it all.
Yeah.
Definitely, that speaks a lot. For me, when it comes to my creativity, I don't want to feel like I'm compressed down. You're into this sort of like road, you're going that way. I'm staring out the window and I'm just like losing my imagination on things. Yeah. And I'm just like, and it's kind of, it's just, and it's fascinating. I think definitely that the education will need to, I mean, I was the same, where my parents put me through sort of like Sunday schools with it, because they knew I was struggling at an early stage. But again, we didn't have any funding with it, and I mean, to now we know there's like 10% of the world have got dyslexic, and it's shocking that to see only 3% of the people or population of the dyslexic my group appreciate the being dyslexic. And we definitely need, we don't want to sort of change the whole concept of like your at schools, but having an external extra curricular or extra learning or extra help, and yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, you both have probably felt the shame in school, when, especially in primary school, when someone would ask you to read, right? So there's an interesting study by a guy called Dr. Kaufman or something. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but he studied the psychology around shame. And he found that people who have difficulties with reading and writing experience the same level of shame as people who have committed, infidelity in their relationship. Now, that tells you a lot. You put a child through a lot of stress at that age already, and their self-confidence just goes woof, and they start, the self-negative talk. And that's why we get so many parents coming to us and saying, I need someone to help my child with confidence. And essentially, my first thought is, okay, well, tell me a little bit more. Is it what is causing that self-confidence issue? Like, what has created that gap? Normally, that's connected to something that you don't know. There's a gap in knowledge, or there's something that you're struggling with, which is bringing your self-confidence down, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's really interesting to like see that shame convert into later life as well. I mean, we still probably feel that shame in other aspects of life, even as an adult. Like a second ago, I was asked to read something, and my colleague just said, "Oh, is there anything wrong with the writing?" I'm like, "No, that's just me. That's just me trying to read it."
Yeah, I have the same, the look of despair. Really trying to process it. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think with the reading out loud, I'm all for trying to encourage kids to do public speaking. I think that is an important thing to do, but it's the way that it's done. And I think that goes for just any child. I was discussing with my husband, Robbie, last night, and he isn't dyslexic. In fact, he's so good at English writing, but he explained a scenario when he was in primary school, was suddenly asked to read on the spot, and had that lapse of concentration, so didn't know what page he was on, and he said it was the most terrifying experience, and it really put him off for life. And even to this day, sometimes struggle to do public speaking. So not just, I think, for dyslexic children, I think you want them to public speak, there's got to be better preparation, hasn't it? Like, so today on this video podcast, we have talked a little bit behind the scenes before going straight into it. So there's that level of planning. So for me, if I had to read something out to someone, I need time to read it beforehand before then going. I can't just get given a piece of paper and go, good luck, because it will be that kind of trying to focus on the page. So that's really interesting points. So yeah, really good.
But funny enough, like, it's sorry to interrupt you.
No, sorry.
But funny enough, like, there's also, I'm really into my stats, so as you can tell.
Yeah.
Funny enough, there's also stats that show, like, majority of dyslexic people, the careers that the median choosers are engineering, entrepreneurship, and what was it, creatives. And I was thinking, like, okay, what about golf? Golf is like engineering. You guys have to be so creative in golf. Like, every time Leah looks at my swing and she's like, oh my God, Naz, like, come on.
No, I never say, oh my God, that's...
Oh my God. So when we first started, it was the funniest thing. Once I even, like, Me and Leah are the clumsiest
Yeah,
people.
but look at what you've done now. Oh my God, you're terrible now, but look at you now. You're amazing.
Yeah. She's like, oh, it's been 4 years, Naz. For fuck's sake, this is called the wedge.
But yeah, we are incredibly clumsy. Yeah, well, I think I know what story you might share in here. Go for it, Naz.
But credit to Leah, she stuck with me.
Patience.
Like I remember we did this like lesson in one of the, I think, what was it, Reigate Hill. And Leah like turned around, and by the time she turned around, somehow I fell into the bunker. And I was like, just sitting there thinking, why am I in the bunker? And she looks at me, she's like, what the are you doing in the bunker?
Oh, beat that bit
out. Did you get a 2-shot penalty as well, though, Naz?
I don't know. She just laughed at me.
I just laughed.
Like, get out.
Yeah, but I do.
Drop your club in your bunker.
She's like, why are you so clumsy?
And I think it might have been that lesson where you told, because I think I said, oh, I do stuff like that all the time. I'm dyslexic, and I think that's when you told me, and it made sense then. So you know, our lessons are quite funny because we do go off piece all the time. It's another trait, but actually, I think you're right. You've got to have a good level of creativity to be good at golf. Stuart last week said about how you see the whole thing as a picture, and you can see how the shot's going to be played out. And from a coaching point of view, you're doing several things at once, and you have to be able to simplify things. I think, Neil, you said that you felt like your strength with dyslexia because you've constantly had to simplify things to get you to understand. It's actually really helped when you've relayed that information over to a student. So it's just trying to pick up those things. If you don't, well, it's not the case that you don't, but if you don't have dyslexia, it is maybe a bit harder to simplify or strip back things and to relate it in a way that someone can understand quite quickly. But if you don't mind me sharing another story with me and you, Naz, and I think that's where your dyslexic brain came in, and it made me laugh so much. We had booked a lesson in, I think, for 6 o'clock. But the diary was in 2,400 hours. So it came through as obviously 1,800 to Naz, but all she's done is read the 8 and not the 1. So it got to 6 o'clock, no nazanin. And I don't think I had your number at the time, so I couldn't ring you. So I've gone home, and then I get a phone call at 8 o'clock going, where are you? And I was like, well, I'm not there because it was at 6, and we just both laughed. It was funny, but that's a classic kind of just.
This is like the time I came to our lesson with no golf clubs. I was like,
yeah, you've done that as well. But it's what I love about you is you do just laugh, you embrace it. So when you make a mistake, you laugh about it. You know, you see the funny side.
I think it's just because you understand it.
It's because I also do the same. But I think that's humour's a big thing with dyslexia or any learning difficulty. I think you do have to see the funny side of it, and it just helps you embrace it. I think you know, we've sort of got used to making mistakes since birth. But actually, it kind of makes you human at the end of the day. And if you make mistakes, you learn how to resolve the mistakes, so you become a better problem solver. I think that seems to be a running theme, actually, the more people we talk to of that subject of coming up with how to get around problems or resolve things. Brilliant. So I think we're running out of time, probably. Again, we do this a lot, talk far too much. So just kind of better bring it to a close. But thank you so much for taking the time, Naz, to join us. And
like some of the tips that I just give for the parents, and it's essentially for the parents that this message should like really be given and out and just blasted, is the fact that you should just give as much attention to your child as possible, and don't put them in a box. You have to get your child to understand they have to lower expectations so that they don't get disappointed, and to expect to work harder. If you tell the child from the start that, you know, you are different, so you'll have to work harder than other children, it's okay. And then help your child to find their strengths. Every one of us is so different. that we need sometimes our parents from that age to help us find our, calling.
Yeah, I love that. Don't put people in a box. I think that's a big message. I love that. That could be the new slogan. Don't be put in a box. But thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
And actually, you mentioned about online tests that you can do to kind of see where you are. I don't know if after this you wouldn't mind giving us a few links to those websites. I'm sure there's quite a lot of parents who appreciate, and adults as well, who are thinking maybe they have the traits and would like to see whether they need to go further testing. So if you wouldn't mind passing those, and we'll put those in the link. I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
so thank you everyone for joining us for Strengths of Being Dyslexic. Neil as well, always a pleasure having you on. And
I feel like Neil didn't get much word in between us two.
Yeah,
Sorry, Neil.
But thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to share, support, and we'll be back very soon with another episode. Excellent. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers.